except the speaker, whoever's speaking can have their mic on. And when we have the discussion session, then we could unmute ourselves. So again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the consultation on the cooperative identity perspectives from the Asia-Pacific region. This is the first consultation that we are having, and we are kicking off with members in the Philippines. The Asia-Pacific region is, in terms of geography, it's quite vast in its scope. So we felt that rather than have one single consultation, it would be good if we could break it up either in terms of country, where we have ICA has quite a few members, like in the Philippines, we have we have 11 members, or in terms of sub-region. And so so we decided we will start with the Philippines, and then the next consultation we'll have is with our members in Iran, and then we hope to move forward from there. In 2020, the ICA celebrated its 125th anniversary, and also the 25th anniversary of the cooperative statement on the cooperative identity. And in 2020, the ICA was planning to have a Congress where members would have come together. And the theme was around deepening cooperative identity. Unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, all our plans had to be changed. And so the ICA also, based on the situation, it kept postponing. From December, we postponed it to March. And now we are hoping to have it in December 2021, again in Seoul. And so the Congress is also going to focus on deepening the cooperative identity in terms of trying to look at how the relevance of the cooperative identity to the current times, and how we can look at its application, its relevance, and how do we interpret it. I think the statement of cooperative identity is seen as a fluid document where based on the situation, cooperatives can use it to interpret it depending on their context and how things are evolving. So that's something which the ICA hopes to do during the Congress. And we at the region wanted to get perspectives from members, and so we are having these consultations. And the whole idea is that based on the series of discussions, we are able to put it together, one as the country or as the region's perspective. And the other is in terms of putting it all together and presenting it at the Congress or to the organizing committee, so that they are able to take the views of members from the Asia Pacific. So we are delighted to have two experts. One is Ms. Omdevi Mala, who is the ICA board member, global board member. She is the vice president at the Nepal Cooperative Federation, and also on the identity task force organized by the global board. So thank you, Omdevi ji, for joining us and being part of these consultations. And we have Professor Akira Kurimoto, who is the chair of the ICAP Research Committee, and he was also a member of the ICA Principles Committee. And the Principles Committee had come up in 2015 with the guidance note on the cooperative identity. And this was after 1995. The Principles Committee looked at the cooperative identity and looked at its relevance to current times. So we are very thankful to Professor Kurimoto for joining us and being part of this consultation. So thank you very much, Professor Kurimoto. Before we start, maybe we can have a quick round of introduction so that our two experts know who's present. From here, let me start from here. From the Asia Pacific Regional Office, we are sitting in the conference room, and I have my colleagues Mohit Dave, Shivali Sarna, Shri Padmanabhan, and Simran Singh. So you met some of them, and maybe you've heard of others, but we are all in the conference room, gathered around our computers. And so from the Asia Pacific side, we'd like to convey our thanks to all of you for joining us. And maybe we can go to each member who's here can just briefly introduce themselves before we get down to our main agenda item.
Yes, Balu. Shall we start?
Sure.
Sylvia Paraguya, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the National Confederation of Cooperatives, NAPCO. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bat.
Good afternoon.
Ladies first.
Okay. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm Tetay Plantilla. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Federation of People's Sustainable Development Cooperative. With me is our chairperson, Father Francis. Can you introduce yourself, please? Thank you.
Father Francis B. Lucas from the Federation of People's Sustainable Development Cooperative, chairperson.
Thank you both.
Good afternoon, Balu. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dennis Santander, Deputy CEO of MASPEC Cooperative Development Center. With me is Sir Romy. Sir Romy, can you introduce yourself, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. Romy Villamin here. I'm the Managing Director of the Institute of Cooperative Studies, that's training unit of MASPEC.
Thank you, Dennis and Robbie, for joining us.
Hi, Balu, and good afternoon, everyone. This is Gary Leonardo, currently the chair of the Philippine Cooperative Center, or PCC.
Thank you, Gary.
Good afternoon, Sir Balu. I am Doris Calapis, chairperson of MASPEC. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Balu. This is Roy Miklat, CEO of the Cooperative Insurer here in the Philippines, one of the cooperative insurers. I have my board of directors also present, so they will introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Iskani Laba, Vice Chair of Cooperative Insurance Philippines.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Balo, I'm Roberto Mascareña, board member of CISP. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Balo. This is Jose Di Tablan, the Chief Executive Officer of Victo National Cooperative Federation Development Center. With me is our chairperson of the board, Maria Luisa Paruco, and the rest of the board of directors of Victo National. Ma'am Malot, please introduce yourself. Thank you. Ma'am Malot. All right, so Mama Lo cannot connect. So Ma'am Bibing, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lydia P. Fernandez, Victo National Board. Thank you.
Welcome.
Ma'am Shirley, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Shirley Cardenas. Hello, Sir Ba.
Okay, do we have everyone or anyone who's not introduced?
Hello,
Yes,
Balu.
good afternoon. This is Director Sumikad from 1 CISP Board of Directors. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Balu. This is Ber Hilario from Union of Labor Service Contracting Cooperatives. I'm the Executive Director, and with me is Celia Guzman. Ms. Celia, kindly introduce yourself. Maybe she could not connect. We can go ahead, please. Thank you.
Mr. Balo, good afternoon. I'm Noel Raboy of Climbs, President CEO.
Welcome.
All.
Okay, I think, do we have everyone? Okay, let's start. I need to just inform you that we've had a power outage here. So we are running on battery, and I do hope that our systems last before the power comes. But let's get started. So I'd like to request Ms. Omdevi Mala. Like I said, she's the chair of the she represents the NCF Nepal Cooperative Federation and is a member of the ICA Global Board. She's also a member of the ICA Task Force on the Identity Committee. So she is best positioned to provide the perspective from the ICA and the ICA Global Board. So I'd like to request Ms. Omdevi Mala to provide her perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Balu. Do you listen me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Are you listening me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now I am going to directly my presentation, and Dr. Mr. Puri Moto, Director of ICAP, and all cooperative leaders from different sector organization for Philippines, and ICAP regional office staff family, and ladies and gentlemen, my sincere thanks to ICAP regional office for this platform. And really, I am very happy to be here with you all. And during this session, we are going to discuss about perspective on the statement of cooperative identity. And I am going to very short PowerPoint presentation because the time is very little bit, but I have a full presentation. I have. If you need, if you want, I will send Mr. Balu that presentation, and you can take from him. Now I am going directly. It's here. You know, it's current here. We know ICA Congress screen is not complete. I adopted Rosedale Principle in 1937 as guidelines for cooperative of operate. The Statement of Cooperative Identity, SCI, as the combined document of cooperative principle and values was developed by ICA. Now we are going to another chapter. The SCI is not a rigid document as rules. SCI is the ethical spirit to follow as per the national rules and regulation, maintaining the governance to meet the economic, social, cultural needs and aspiration of the member through a jointly owned SCI is SCI guide of operating. I'm going to continue. The SCI not only to operator for operating the cooperative business, but also to cooperative promoters, regulators, government, and civil society otherwise. Moreover, SCI added to the new leaders, etc. in the 21st century. Cooperative social business, but they are not. COVID-19 pandemic, extreme poverty, food security, climate change, financial crisis, access to education, technological innovation, all these are common global challenges. Cooperative have owned SDG and have proactively been implementing them with their own equity approaches at level. I'm going to continue now. They build the social capital, unite people for their socio-economic, cultural, and environmental benefits driven by the SCI. The competitive advantage of cooperative approach is a way to fight against the global challenges. Challenges of SCI. Cooperative contribute best to society. They should be developed as natural movement of formalize the informal economy or as agent to narrow the gaps between haves and haves not. In some cases, government influence cooperative as an implementing instruments of their plan, policies, and programs pose challenge. Another one, profit-seeking individual mindset, tendency of enjoying autonomy freely, taking cooperative as forums of gaining political interest, etc., challenge the true application of SCI in the operation of cooperative. We are going to another slide. Why of overcoming SCI? Way of overcoming SCI. Access of cooperative education to every segment of society could be the first option to change the individual mindset into collective interest with good governance for the benefits of humanities. Intervention could be formal cooperative education in school, college, and university. Another one, promotion of digitalization and innovation in cooperative is another option to overcome the challenges in the cooperative world, competitive world. SCI competitive advantage. The competitive advantage of the SCI is to attract youth, women, and marginalized segment of the society. The diversity of membership has opened possibility of involving new generation as future leader. Fifth principle of training, education, and information provide opportunity to the new commerce through the school and college education. Stakeholder, we verify how stakeholders support SCI, another chapter, another the
Sorry, video.
yeah. The role of the national apex body is to safeguard the SCI in their own national context, linking with internal and external stakeholders. UN regulation in 2001 and ILO recommendation 193 for the promotion of cooperative partnership with FAO, ILO for long-term European Union and other stakeholders shine a light on the growing awareness of the importance of cooperative in tackling poverty and inequality. Before conclusion, let's see receive in brief about SCI once again. And in my last chapter, cooperation among the cooperative direct us to work collaboratively within cooperative network based on SCI. Concern for community deserve the separate identity of cooperative to collaborate with the government, development partners, and other agencies to enhance the wide range of partnership. And last one, member democratic control deserve the supremacy of members for the true application SCI. Thank you for listening, Min, and hope if you have any question, I will touch with you later. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Omdevi ji, and for laying out the context. You did touch upon the challenging times that we are in, especially as we tide over the COVID-19 pandemic and try to gauge how our response should be. So we are currently in this COVID-19 situation, trying to grapple with that and see how we can move forward. So that's something which I think during the discussion stage we can touch upon in terms of the challenges that we've faced and how we've tried to leverage the identity in terms of addressing some of the challenges. But you also, I think, touched upon the fact that there are challenges when it comes to the statement of cooperative identity in terms of its how the government uses cooperatives as a tool. It varies from country to country, so there is the role of the government. Two is also in terms of the how cooperatives themselves are putting in place the cooperative values and principle. That's an issue, internal issue. There are external issues relating to the identity statement, and there are also internal issues. But at the same time, there are two things which stand in terms of our advantage. One is the recognition which different international bodies have. They've recognized the values and principles and enshrined them. For example, the ILO. So there is the international support. And given the current situation, what the experience has been in terms of the market-driven models, there is opportunity for the cooperatives with their values and principles to be able to attract young people, to be able to attract new audiences. So I think that's the positive for that. But at the same time, there is an onus on the national apexes to see how they can enhance education. Principle 5, you mentioned about Principle 5, the importance of education, training and information to make the public aware, to make the members aware, and of course the board also. So there is a role which the national apexes have to play. So I think you've laid out the broad context, and now I would like to request Professor Kurimoto to provide his perspective on what he sees from the Asia perspective lens. Professor Kurimoto?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you
yes.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Could you present my slides? Could you open the file?
One minute, we just.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And yes, please make, yes, okay. So thank you for introduction, Mr. Balu. I am now talking about deepening cooperative identity from the Asia-Pacific perspectives. Next slide, please. Why cooperative identity matters now? We witnessed the growing inequality, political and social divides, while we are threatened by the consequences of climate changes and pandemics. To succeed overcoming these challenges, we desperately need the cooperation and solidarity among people. In such a difficult time, we have to address such global issues relying on our basics, that is, cooperative identity, crystallized in the ICA Statement on Cooperative Identity, agreed as the greatest common factor among worldwide cooperators in 1995. And the ICA Statement was included in the United Nations Cooperative Guidelines and the ILO Recommendations 193. The ICA Principles Committee published the guidance notes for cooperative principles in 2015 to help understanding and practicing principles. I was part of it. So please, next, okay. So I shall very briefly touch upon the 150 years journey from Rosedale to Manchester. Rosedale Society's rule gradually evolved to principles since 1844. And Rosedale principles enshrined the rule books from 1860. The first configuration of cooperative principles in 1937 and second one in 1966. And ILO recommendation 127 focused on the developing countries. And finally, the ICA Identity Statement was approved at ICA Congress in Manchester that contains the definition of cooperative, its values and principles, its essence. Next, please.
Again, I apologize. We've had a power outage here, but we will continue to move. Please.
Okay. So yes. Before one. Yes. First, former slide. Yes. From Ledrow's report to ICA Statement. These 15 years from 1980 to 1995, that was a very critical time to define, rethink about our cooperative identity, started by Alex Ledrow's report in 1980. And then Lars Marx, he was the president of the ICA. He had reported on the basic values of cooperatives in 1988. And then Svenoke book reported on the cooperative values in a changing world at the ICA 1992 Congress in Tokyo. And then finally, ICA Identity Statement was approved in 1995 Congress in Manchester. So please, next slide.
Next.
Yes. Before going to the principles, I should touch upon very briefly on the characteristics of Asia-Pacific cooperatives. Asia-Pacific region has a vast diversity of the political, legal system, economic system, level of development, culture, and religion. Such a diversity makes regional political and economic integration very difficult compared with Europe, for instance. Asia-Pacific cooperatives operate under such circumstances. Asian cooperatives are characterized by the dominant state roles in regulation and promotion, while Pacific cooperatives like Australia and New Zealand, their cooperatives face strong competition with for-profit sector. The British Empire introduced the Cooperative Credit Society Act of India in 1904. It became the prototype of cooperative legislation in most of the colonized countries. Most of the Asian countries have been following that tradition. Even after the independence, such top-down tradition was inherited, since national leaders at that time had seen cooperatives as an engine or agent for national development. So to change such situation, ICA Asia Pacific had convened the biennial Cooperative Ministers Conference since 1990, aiming to strengthen cooperative autonomy and independence based on constructive partnership with the government, but the progress has been very slow. Next, please. So I shall touch upon each principle, how we are doing, and what is the challenges for each principle. First principle, open membership. This principle address no discrimination. In the Asian context, the participation of women and youth is most relevant issue, since male and senior leaders are prevalent in cooperatives in Asia, reflecting on the embedded dominant culture, male dominating culture. There are cooperatives exclusively composed of women in India, Iran, Malaysia, etc., to avoid gender discrimination, while women occupy a majority of membership and board members in consumer cooperatives in Japan and South Korea. I am very pleased to notice that in the Philippines, the female leaders have played very important and dominant roles in guiding cooperatives. I know many leaders over past 3 decades. I met many very powerful female leaders in Victor, Maspec, NATCO, etc. So many of my Filipino friends are the female leaders. The lack of youth participation may engender the sustainability of cooperatives. The second principle, the democratic control. This is concerned with the internal governance of a cooperative. Recently, we have witnessed the governance leading cooperatives. In the UK, the cooperative group and cooperative bank had failed. And in Spain, the Mondragons, the largest workers' cooperatives, had bankrupted. So there are many failures we have witnessed these years. So governance is very important, as pointed out in the blueprint of cooperatives. The guidance notes to the cooperative principles exhibit guidelines for the wide range of governance issues. And in Japan, to cope with the governance failures faced consumer cooperatives in Japan, the Japanese Consumers Cooperative Union published the guidelines for sound governance in 1990. And since then, still struggling to establish active and good governance in the consumer cooperation in Japan. Okay, next please. The third principle on member economic participation deals with the members' obligation in strengthening the capital base of their cooperatives. A cooperative has inherent difficulty in raising capital because of the limited return on capital and equal voting rights. That is the reason why the investors will not come to cooperatives, because they cannot enjoy the full return on their investment and their proportional voting rights. But in cooperatives, it is not possible. And so that is the reason why some cooperatives in Australia and New Zealand were actualized. But such option is not popular in most of the Asian countries. I'm happy to see that. In Japan, agricultural cooperatives run the world-class bank, but huge amount of farmers' deposit is not effectively utilized, while consumer cooperatives in Japan build up members' share capital through a monthly installment. So every every consumers in Japan have more than $300 as share capital. Amazing compared with the United Kingdom, where members have only £1, $1.4 as share capital, members share. But in Japan, we have no problem of the finance, or we are even bothered by the overcapitalization. So our problem is how to use such accumulated capital. So the problem is quite different from Europe or North America. The fourth principle on autonomy and independence is a principle newly added 1995. It is especially relevant to Asian cooperatives, since cooperatives are still, by and large, under the strong state control or sponsorship. To need change to establish the constructive partnership between the government and cooperatives based on equality. Both states and cooperatives need to change their attitude. The state has to confine itself to legal supervision in accordance with the United Nations ILO guidelines, while the cooperatives has to build capacities in strategic planning and coordination so as to be more independent in policy making. So recently, I found that the government should lessen its control to the cooperatives, while the cooperatives have to build up their own capacity to make policies and run business by their own. That is really most important factors. Without such an changing attitude, mindset, we can't attain this autonomy and independence. Okay, next slide, please. Fifth principle, education, training, and information is a principle enlisted since the time of Rosedale pioneers. Member education is essential for the success of cooperatives, while manager-employee training are conducted at various levels, local, regional, and national, and international levels. But in Asia, we can see many school cooperatives or university campus cooperatives. They are conducive to the cooperative development in the long run. So that is very strong basis of the university cooperatives and school cooperatives in many parts of the world region. In the Philippines, I know that there is very strong school cooperative and university cooperatives. We have met many leaders of university cooperatives. So this is a strength of Asian cooperatives. In the information age, the importance of public relations is increasingly recognized, but cooperatives tend to lag behind in utilizing state-of-the-art digital devices. So in this regard, we have to change our situation. The sixth principle on the cooperation among cooperatives. Cooperatives of the same kind are naturally federated at regional and national levels, while the collaboration among different kinds of cooperatives need to be facilitated. In Japan, the direct transaction between consumers and producers, we call it sanchoku or teikei, have been promoted by consumers and farmers fishery cooperatives to enhance understanding each other and realize mutual benefits since the 1970s, while the Japan Cooperative Alliance was set up as a think tank covering all types of cooperatives just 3 years ago. ASEAN Cooperative Organization, ACO, was established but need to create tangible benefits, I feel. Okay, so next please, the final page. The seventh principle, concern for community, is a new principle added in 1995. This is related to cooperatives' community engagement. In the Asia-Pacific regions prone to natural disasters caused by earthquakes, tsunami, and typhoons, cyclones that frequently brought formidable human and monetary losses. We can note that cooperatives' response to such calamities in both rescue phase and rehabilitation phases. We observed cooperative endeavors to rehabilitate victims' life in Indonesia after Aceh earthquake, and Sri Lanka, India and Sri Lanka, and so on after the Indian Ocean earthquake, tsunami in 2004. After the Kobe earthquake, 1995, the East Japan earthquake, 11, just 10 years back, the Japanese cooperatives made tremendous efforts to rescue victims and help them to rehabilitate normal lives. It's proud of us that we have succeeded to enact a new law to help the victims to give 3 million yen to help their rehabilitation of lives. Of course, 3 million yen is not enough to build new house, but at least they can rebuild their lives for the moment. So this is made by the cooperative efforts by JCCU, Zenrosai, Coop Kobe, and Rengo, the trade union congress in Japan. We have collected 25 million signatures, and the government have to respond to this. So that is why we have succeeded to break the bureaucracy, which had opposed, very strongly opposed to such kind of the relief scheme, because of the private property can't be compensated by the public money. That is the reason. But we have broken that dogma and succeeded to enact a new law to help victims. So that is very brief introduction of my presentation. And we need to find best practices deepening cooperative identity in the Asia-Pacific region. Last year, we have published a book called Waking the Asia-Pacific Cooperative Potential from Elsevier, the internationally known publisher of the academic papers and books, focusing on the Asia-Pacific. And we have depicted around 30 best practices in Asia. And so now we are editing the second book to pick up more good examples, best practices. And I think the Philippines to the Asian brothers and sisters and to the global friends. So in this regard, I do hope you can join us in contributing articles, papers to our new endeavors. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Kurimoto, for bringing in the perspective across the Asia-Pacific countries. And this week or this month is when we are also marking the 10 years since the Fukushima disaster took place in Japan. So your emphasis on the disaster and concern for the community at this point in time is very apt. Japan also has been dynamic in terms of looking at the context and how cooperatives can play a relevant role given some of the emerging issues. And one example of that is the Worker Cooperatives Act, which was recently passed in Japan. So again, thank you for laying out the broad scenario. As you mentioned, the Asia-Pacific region, given its geography and its diversity, has the experiences across the board. It's not something very uniform like you would find in Europe. But then the diversity brings in the different experience that we have. And again, thank you for taking us through the 7 principles and laying out how the situation or how the application has varied and what the issues are. So thank you both to Professor Kurimoto and Omdevi ji. I think we can open it out now, having heard from a global level and from the Asia perspectives. And I think it'll be a good time to look at it more from the Philippines perspective. And I'd like to open the floor for all those who are here in terms of wanting to, one, respond to what you've heard from a Philippines context, and two is, are there any particular questions which you would have for Professor Kurimoto or Omdevi ji? We can start from there and then take on some of the other issues after that. The floor is open for anyone who wants to come in.
Balu?
Yes.
I'm sorry of the sound. Just to start it off, thank you for the presentations. It's good to listen again to the basic principles. In the Philippines, this is just a starting discussion. There are some which in a sense exhibit the different principles. So for example, in the concern for the community, right, in our way of distributing our surplus, there is a community development fund, and that means that it is not just a statement, but there is really some funding which goes to your expression of concern for the community. This is the same with the education, goes to the Co-op Education and Training Fund. So in a sense, there is a connection between the principle and even the way we operate in terms of how we use our net surplus. When I look at cooperation among cooperatives, then what comes to my mind is the fact that a number of our cooperatives are not really affiliated, because it looks like some co-ops are saying that it's part of our autonomy and independence not to be affiliated. But at the same time, when you look at cooperation among cooperatives, this should bring together the different cooperatives in the federations and unions so that they can work together. And when I look at cooperation among cooperatives, I look at several mechanisms which are very helpful in the integrated network. So for example, you have a resiliency fund which is ready if there are disasters, or you have you're handling the liquidity management, which can help cooperatives in need of liquidity support. And so that would be just to start of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Yes, Mr. Balu. Good afternoon. Yeah, I think in Romy Villamin here.
Yes, yes, Rom.
I think in the Philippines, we are not wanting in promoting the statement cooperative identity. It's embedded in our pre-membership education. I think the pre-membership education is unique to the Philippines. I think we are the only country in the world that requires pre-membership as a requirement for membership. Otherwise, you're not accepted as a regular member. We also promote this through our education and training. And if you go around the country, we can see you can see the cooperative values and principles displayed in I think so we are not wanting in that respect that we are promoting as individual cooperatives and as federations. We're promoting the cooperative identity within our membership and also publicly. I think the problem is more on consistency. We are cooperative. We tend to be selective, unfortunately, in applying or practicing some of these principles. And I could cite, for instance, the sixth principle, the cooperation among cooperatives, mentioned by Abing earlier. In the Philippines, what's really happening is we have more competition among cooperatives rather than cooperation among cooperatives, and this has distorted somehow the image of the cooperatives, even publicly. I think that's one reason why cooperatives are not seen by the public in the way we should be seen, precisely because we don't exhibit, we don't display the kind of behavior that we say we have because of our values and principles. So I think that's one challenge that we have, the consistency in the application of these values and principles. And you can look at it from the primary co-op level. There are many inconsistencies in the application. You can also see this in even the federation level. So that's my contribution to this discussion.
Balu.
Balu. Okay.
Hello.
Sorry, I was muted.
Thank you, go ahead.
Thank you, Romy.
Okay.
I think that's an important point in terms of application and how consistent we are in the application of our principles. And it's not just one principle, but the 7 principles itself in terms of how is it in practice. I think that's something which we can come back to. But yes, I'm sorry, I seem to have intervened when someone wanted to speak. Please go ahead.
This is Tetay Plantilla. I think while the Philippines, while we have concrete manifestations of the principles, particularly in allocating funds for community concern, and I think we have not really consolidated or documented our best practices to really deepen the cooperative identity in the Philippines. So I think this is one of the challenges that we have in order to to use those best practices in really promoting the cooperative identity. And also, I think in the Philippines, while there is a growing government interest in the cooperative in the past 10 years, it's a good opportunity also for us to continue to engage the government, maybe to elect cooperative people or people with cooperative mindset in Congress and in Senate. That's my contribution, Bago.
Thank you, Tete.
So, Balu, this is Judy Tablan of Victor National.
Yes, please.
Hello. All right.
Yes.
So I'll just to point out about the leadership in cooperative in the Philippines. So in the Philippines, right now, I would say that the participation of women increases as far as leadership is concerned compared to previous years. Well, in fact, not only the federations who advocate for women empowerment and for shared leadership in the cooperative movement, but a strong support, or a good support rather, is that issue a memorandum circular mandating all registered cooperative in the country to install or institutionalize their own gender program. And even the federations, it is notable that they have a gender board representing the sector in the leadership. And even Victor advocating that for so long a time. So right now, various federations and unions, and even our alliance, PCC, strongly advocate gender participation in the leadership. I think that's one thing that I must say that one improvement in the Philippines as far as leadership is concerned, and the strong participation of women in the leadership. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Balu. Hilario here from ULSEC. I think the gender participation in the Philippines is happening naturally. There's no discrimination. Whoever is competent are recognized and allowed to participate in the leadership. So that's one good thing. And in terms of deepening the cooperative identity, there are so many challenges in practice, in real practice. I think if you will separate the theory from the practice, from the actual practice, there are many good theories in cooperativism that we should really emphasize, like caring for others, caring for community, helping and cooperating. But when it comes to practice, I think those presented problems, those issues presented by our speaker are really coming into play. And those are the things address in order to really enhance or attach ourselves to those principles. Because honestly, we are having difficulty living those principles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
Balu?
Yes.
Yeah, Father Anton here.
Yes,
From,
please.
What do I represent? I represent the Union of Metro Manila Cooperatives and also some federations, CISP and Metro South Cooperative Bank. First, sorry to be late. I have to do some church chores, no? But basically, when I'm very interested with the cooperative identity, because we have to revisit, no, the co-op sector in the Philippines as we participate in ICA 2030, Vision 2030, to revisit first and foremost the co-op identity in the Philippines, no? Because seemingly, as many of the leaders have said already, we are mission drifting, no? We call that mission drift. No, we are getting out of the identity of the cooperative. No? Before we can go to programs and strategies and structures, we have to be aware of the identity. No, and in my reflection, when we talk about the identity, I think we should start first with values, then principles. Now, in my reflection lately, because it's the values, no, that would lead us to the true north. The values of self-help, no, self-responsibility, solidarity, no, concern for the others, especially the poor. We have to focus on the values because, as we know, values don't change. They are the anchors of our who we are. No, the principles can be integrated. No, but first we have to focus on the values, because without the values, no, we are not a cooperative. No? Without the, for example, I'm going back to national leadership for the last 2 to 3 years. No, I noticed a shifting. You know, the small cooperatives, around 80% of the cooperatives in the Philippines are micro. No, and they are so dependent on government. No, and of course the government is not the cooperative. No, our cooperative development authority is not a cooperative; it's a government sector. No. The government sector is trying to intervene in our sector, but it violates the very essence of autonomy and independence. It violates the very essence of self-help. No, the small cooperatives, no, are very deep. It's parang the treatment of the government. The treatment of the government with the cooperative is like an NGO. No, they look at the local government, especially CDA also. They look at small cooperatives as an NGO. No, to be dependent on grants, no, and donations, no. But the very essence of our value is self-help. Self-help. We have to learn how to stand on our own. Okay, from the beginning, no. We should not be dependent. No, we should start on our own. And the big cooperatives in the Philippines, like San Dionisio and the revered cooperatives, they started on their own. Self-help. Like Simbayanan, my cooperative, no, we followed the tradition of San Dionisio. On the other extreme, the big cooperatives, no, with due respect to the billionaires naman tend to be like corporate in their mentality, because they are big. They don't need anybody. They're on their own, no. But there's no sense of solidarity, as one leader said. There's no sense of principle number 6, cooperation among cooperatives. No, they don't. Or if they participate or they give their CETF, no, it's just out of token, but not really real commitment to strengthen the sector by really remitting your cooperative education and training fund. No? Because there's this extreme. The small ones, very dependent on government, and the big ones, they're acting like corporations. No, we lost the very identity of the cooperativism. No, and of course the government is coming in. Yeah, we have this NGO mentality. We have this corporate mentality, then the government mentality of who the government is trying to lead us. No, we told the government, you don't lead us, you support us, because the cooperative sector should be led by the cooperatives, not by the government. No, because of our self-help, independent nature. And before I end, no, Balu, I think the problem here. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think the root problem, no, we miss the importance of the unions, because there are two higher level of corporations: federations and unions, according to the cooperative code, no, and we need them both. No, we need them both. They're the two sides of one coin. Two sides of one coin. Okay. There should be a balance between unions and federations. I think what will preserve the identity of the co-op sector is the union, because the union, which is according to the code, it represents all the sectors, all types of cooperative representation, education, and training. I think we lost touch of the importance of the union, because federation by nature is supposed to be focused on business expansion and consolidation. But it is the union that will preserve the cooperative identity of the whole sector. I think we can rekindle once more the co-op identity by strengthening the union in the whole country. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I think we talk about principles, but like you said, the values is something which is also equally important, and we need to be keeping the values also in perspective and not just looking at the principle. I think that's a very, very important point that you have brought about. And I think the way in which you've talked about the challenges in terms of the small versus the large, and the in between the government playing a part, I think all are very relevant issues, and I'm sure we'll touch upon that as we get into this discussion.
Balu?
Yes, please.
I'd like to just pursue some of the ideas presented by Professor Korimoto earlier. Among cooperatives, what struck me actually is the point that there should be a federation of cooperatives of similar types. At the same time, there should be also an organization that somehow these different types of cooperatives can also work together, pursue a national agenda for the co-ops. So maybe the challenge in the Philippines is how can we pursue that? How can we pursue that? For example, co-op banks generally in this country are quite weak. Agricultural cooperatives, with few exceptions, also are weak. The pandemic actually highlighted the need to help farmers bring their produce to consumers. But we don't have, we are not working together. There are technologies available. It's just a matter of cooperatives working together in order for this smooth transfer of goods can be facilitated from the agricultural sector to the consumers. Even if we limit ourselves consumers or our member co-ops, that can be easily done. But it's really a matter of, as pointed out by Romy earlier, maybe not think about competition, but rather real cooperation among cooperatives, so that all these problems that we face now can be easily addressed. There are also competing digital platform. All we have to do is agree on one so that we can really also cooperate easily. We are also, in my case, while I'm involved in co-op insurance, I'm also involved in water cooperative. We are now starting to deliver water in especially urban, rural areas. And I know, I mean, we are open to accepting other co-ops to help us in widen our effort in this endeavor. Because it's good really to pursue that public utilities will be owned by the consumers. And I hope we can also work together. So that's just my contribution in this discussion, Mr. Balu. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think that's an important couple of points which you brought about there. One is the importance which the agricultural cooperatives, especially during this pandemic, the importance of agriculture and farmers has been highlighted, not just in the Philippines, but even across all countries. And in India, it's a very live issue these days in terms of how do we address needs of farmers, especially in, I think Philippines may also be in a similar situation where to India, where more than 80% of the farmers are either small or marginal. While there is the attempt to open up farming, and to markets and to competition, how do we address the need of small and marginal farmers? I think that's one big area for us to be looking into. And the other, which the areas which got impacted by the pandemic were in the services. Even today, in many countries, many of the services sectors, be it tourism, be it tourism primarily, but then many of the worker cooperatives in terms of restaurants, in terms of the service industry have been badly affected. And again, there is tremendous opportunity in terms of how we can look at cooperatives in the emerging, in some of the areas which have shown up as so important, but then so much in need. I think that's so when you mentioned about utilities, I think that's something which we also need to be looking into. Okay,
Sir
if yes, please.
Sir Bal. Yes, Edwin Bustillos from Philippine Cooperative Center. Thank you for the presentation of Ma'am Omdevi Mala and Professor Kurimoto. In particular, I would like to share some points raised by Professor Kurimoto regarding the Asia-Pacific cooperatives operate under such circumstances where the political, legal system, economic system, level of development make regional political economic integration very difficult. So in the context of cooperativism, I think while we are pursuing the social solidarity economy at the national level, I think there should also be a discussion on ways forward on the regional level as well. It's nice that the sector in its recent planning workshop established a vision indicating that the model preferred by the people in 2030 is the model of a Philippine cooperative, where there is a sustainability and the enterprise and the social enterprise can be considered as an alternative to the dominant one. So talking about that identity, I think I would like to borrow Father Anton's quotation every time he speaks about cooperativism. I think the cooperatives are social enterprise with ideology. And when we speak of ideology, there's already the principles, there's already the values, but we talk of an alternative to the dominant system, wherein we can be an agent for social transformation, which we are doing right now. And at the same time, we can be a tool for poverty reduction. We can enhance and further advocate for cooperative agenda, not only at the national level, but in the international level as well. And finally, also the role of cooperatives in the education and advocacy work. Father Anton explicitly explained the role of unions, so I would not delve on that. But I think going back to the fundamentals where Professor Kurimoto mentioned and articulated a while ago, these 7 principles, including values, should again be part of, be a refresher to all cooperative leaders, particularly on principles 6 and 7. It's very important, not only at the national level, but in the regional level as well. What do we mean by cooperation among cooperatives? In all aspects, economic, political, and cultural. What do we mean by care for the community? The last time when during a Senate hearing, the Cooperative Development Authority insisted in a bill where we are discussing the corporate social responsibility, that the cooperative social responsibility be part of the bill. I explained that a corporate social responsibility is entirely different of that of the cooperative social responsibility, which is explained in principle number 7. So as I've mentioned, I think if they are the regulators and the authority in this matter, and they're proposing something, a new bill that will be incorporated in that bill regarding cooperative social responsibility, I think there is a problem in the understanding of the of a cooperative, of the cooperative movement. Having said that, Sir Balu and everyone here, our distinguished leaders in the cooperative sector, I think we need to revisit what do we mean by caring for the community on a larger perspective, particularly if the authority is limiting us, I mean in the Philippines, is limiting us we would like to help the community, but hey, you cannot do that by giving relief or rehabilitation. You have to do that in accordance with the memorandum circular, particularly on the infrastructure item, which is it's an imposition not born out from a consultation from the consultation where the cooperatives must participate. So we need to, I suggest that we revisit that, and in part of educating our sector, we need to define that principle so we will not be lost. Now, having said that, Sir Balu, under those circumstances, I think the regulation being implemented by the state and promoting it, in particular in the Philippines, only marginalize further the initiatives of the cooperative sector vis-a-vis in poverty reduction and caring for the society. I don't know if in other countries there are these strict regulations where cooperatives are bounded with these regulations that that in the cooperative sector. So yes, I would like to paraphrase again Father Anton's quotation that cooperative is the social enterprise with an ideology. So I think that's one of the identity we must pursue. Thank you, Sir Balu.
Thank you, Edwin, for that. Yes, Father Francis. Yes.
Yeah, I've been listening to the different inputs given by everybody, but thinking, looking back at the first slide of Professor Karimoto, the main issue we have in the world equity or inequality. And I think that the origin of cooperative was that, looking at the communities, for example, upon from centuries immemorial. So I see that the competitive advantage of cooperatives in the Philippines, which some people do not see, it's not being tax-free. It's not being tax-free because that has become a very huge issue. It's not that. Yes, I agree. Its competitive advantage should also be its soul, its identity. Yes, I agree there are principles and there are values. But oftentimes the big problem is value does not become virtue. It's all talk. When you come to big and huge money that you try to acquire, then big resources, huge amounts of money, is also power. And oftentimes, this is the time when the small ones are being neglected. And the cooperatives with new ventures oftentimes forget about the small ones who they recruit to be partners of their enterprise. So caring for the community and its competitive advantage, I see this now should go to the very basic. We started in the Philippines, many of us started with credit cooperative. Now one of us, I think it's a Ghani who said that they're running a water system. I think this is the way to test assistance to the community. If the federation can assist the smaller one, the regional one, and coming together to provide at least two, the water and electricity. These are very vital consumer needs of people. You cannot live without water. You cannot live without electricity in the world today. But what is our advocacy for that? Because competitive advantage should also be its number. Its number. We have to compute that number. But oftentimes, if you ask in a PMES seminar, why do you want to join the cooperative? What do they say? Oh, it's tax-free. Oh, I can get credit. Oh, all the good things for themselves. But never will you ever hear, I want to join a system that will protect the poor. I want to join a system that will see to it that equity will slowly be erased. That is just my observation of what's happening with that. So we have not only to depend on our values, but we have to see this as our virtue, things that you apply. We can have so many principles, but if it does not become part of our virtue, then you see the principle based on a value. And that is the real ideology of it all. So that's just a reflection concretely, at least in the Philippines, our caring for our communities and our involvement in the socio-economic and political change in the country, which is the cooperative spirit.
Thank you, Father Francis, for that. Is there anyone who would like to come in?
Balu?
Yes, Gary.
Yes, Balu, I would just like to echo 2 points that were raised, no? Romy and Edwin in particular. First of all, I agree with what Romy shared earlier, that to some extent, if not to a large extent, we are really struggling with the issue relating to cooperation among cooperatives. Well, some of us may not feel that it is not that pronounced, no? But on the other hand, I would say, as Romy did, that you could still feel the lack of it. I'm not even sure if it has to do with the level of trust or maybe lack of trust that we would all need to master. Because like for instance, over at PCC, we have been enjoining our major federations to come together on specific initiatives such as that mentioned by Ghani earlier. And I would like to think that we have had some moderate success in this regard. Then the other issue, which I would also consider a challenge that we are struggling with, has to do with the principle of autonomy or subsidiarity, specifically in terms of enhancing the partnership of the sector with the government, while at the same time keeping a desired level of autonomy. And I specifically base this on our own experience at PCC, without maybe belaboring the point at this juncture, although a concrete case was already cited by Edwin earlier. So if you don't mind, I wouldn't want to belabor that point as yet.
Thank you. I think, sorry, I'll just wait for, is there anyone else who would like to come in? Okay. I think we touched upon during this course of your putting across your views. I think we touched upon many of the principles, but we kept hearing a lot about the cooperation among cooperatives and concern for the community, the autonomy, and the need for also looking at how we educate, how we put across the positives of the cooperatives and the values and identity. What I wanted to also ask, again, there's a question to everyone is, given we are still going through the COVID-19 pandemic, what is it that has come out, one has shown I wouldn't, for lack of a better word, say the negative side, and what is the positive that has come out of it for the cooperative movement in the Philippines? And this again in relation to looking at cooperatives based on the identity, looking at the values and principles and the definition. So what have you all seen as the COVID-19 in terms of negative and positive coming out of it?
Well, Balu.
Yes, please.
Yes, Balu. Yes, of course, in a crisis, there are two phases. There is a threat and opportunity. I think the corporate sector was able to take advantage of the opportunity. And historically, they say cooperatives thrive in crisis. Cooperatives thrive in crisis. Remember the origin of modern day cooperative, Rosedale pioneers. There was an economic crisis during that 19th century that brought about the birth of the Rosedale pioneers. And of course, technology is the benefit. We see the opportunity. We see always opportunity in the crisis. It brought the cooperatives together. We're able to use technology to bring us together. And a lot of PCC, during last year, PCCs was able to level up, and was able to unify critical mass of leadership and consolidation of our business through our clustering. Although CDA was also doing their own clustering, okay, but I think the COVID, although there's really very dangerous situation, we were able to navigate and see the opportunity. And as far as my experience is concerned, we are thriving in crisis. That's our dictum with once ASP with our president Roy Miklat. We want to thrive in crisis. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anyone else?
Balu, Ibing
Yes.
Paraguya from Marco.
Yes, please.
I think what was shown during COVID is how to connect the agri-based co-ops and the urban cooperatives. For example, those who are producers of rice are connected to the cooperatives in the urban areas also needing rice. So I think if this can be enhanced even after COVID, this is a very good initiative. We also saw that there was an experience of aggregating from different cooperatives. So for example, in our experience, we aggregated vegetables from one vegetable group, cooperatives with vegetable, with that with rice, with that with dried fish, and with this aggregation, we use this to provide to those in the urban center. So there is the COVID experience, how highlighted how you connect the urban and the rural, and not just co-ops in the urban to co-ops in the rural, but also the co-ops in the rural to the other stakeholders in the urban areas. Second is we have been monitoring the financials of cooperatives, and we saw that the deposit liabilities of the cooperatives on the average have increased during this COVID time. So because the cooperatives initiated the move to help the communities, I think they gained the support of the community. So we thought that initially there will be so many withdrawals from the co-ops, but there is an increase in the deposit liabilities. At the same time, the liquidity has remained high. The challenge here, Balu, is that while on the average it is high, actually it is held individually by the cooperatives. So I think the COVID experience highlights the need for mechanisms like there's a liquidity management at the federation level where the cooperatives will put in a certain percentage so that in this time of COVID, you will see the power of those numbers, and then mechanisms can be set up so that those in need of liquidity will be helped. Because right now in paper there is so much liquidity, but it is not held by an organization so that those who are falling below the average in terms of liquidity can be helped. So the learnings from here is that we need some mechanisms which can help all of us, and I think the big co-ops have a role to play here. And I'd like to connect that also to the discussion on cooperation, wherein we need cooperation in several levels, in the federation, across the clusters, and we need the big co-ops to also patronize the shared services of the federation so that whatever is shared and with investments also from the big can also help the small co-ops. So those are the points I've raised. The linkage of the urban and rural was highlighted. There are mechanisms which we need to set up, because while on the average we are thriving as shown by the post, releasing liquidity is above standard, but actually it is not. We do not have the mechanism to help those which have liquidity problems. And third is the cooperation also within the federation so that these shared services can be helpful also to the small cooperatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Mr. Chair, Chair Gary is Chair?
Yes, Edwin.
Yes, sir. Kayo po, sir. Papalap na lang ako sa inyo.
Well, with respect to the rural with the urban, we're actually pinning our hopes, Balu, on this value chain initiative, digitize that. That's why we're trying to bring together, as Ibing herself expressed, we at PCC, we are really hoping that we can bring together our major federations in a digital environment or in a digital ecosystem that will make things or make life a lot easier for all of us, whether for cooperatives that are based in the rural areas or based in the cities. We're really pinning our hopes on everyone coming together on digital value chain. Value.
Okay, that's good. I think we'll definitely be looking into. Yeah.
I think the COVID also highlighted the role of the Apex in terms of advocacies, because during the COVID times, there was a time when cooperatives were not considered essential operations, and PCC led the advocacy so that we will be considered essential. And more than that, we have also PCC leading us in advocacy so that cooperatives can also be part of the stimulus packages which were framed by the House of Representatives. So there was a lot of work done by the Apex as the lead in mobilizing cooperatives so that we become essential operations, and at the same time we become participants or partners in the stimulus package of the government. That was a lot of work done by the Apex.
Okay.
Yes, Sir Balo, if I may add, I think this is a good news for the cooperative movement in the Philippines because of the efforts of the different federations, unions, and other stakeholders. I think last year we were able to lobby the Senate and the House of Representatives regarding the passage of the month of October of every year as the National Cooperative Month. So that's one landmark that because of the active participation of the different cooperatives in spite of the pandemic, the passage clearly emphasized the importance of cooperatives as effective instrument for social change. Second, I think because of that, siguro our leaders here will validate this of the Committee on Cooperatives Development and the Committee on Cooperatives at the Senate. They recognize the contribution of the cooperative sector in the fight against COVID-19 and regarded cooperatives as direct and active conduits of the state in economic recovery programs. Even in fact, the national government agencies led by the Secretary of DTI, Department of Trade and Industry, Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, Secretary of the Department of Interior and Local Government, recognize the participation, contribution of the cooperatives during the pandemic. Thank you, Sir Balo.
Okay. Anyone else would like to come in?
I just wanted to add, Balu, that actually earlier this morning, just this morning, a representative, an assistant secretary from the Department of Interior and Local Government expressed openness about forging a how do I put it? Actually, we were initially looking at a three-way partnership, but I can't exactly put it as multilateral partnership between the sector and several agencies of government. I hope you don't mind the noise. Some people are fixing my house. Well, just to quickly add to what Edwin said earlier.
Okay. There's one other question which we also wanted to get your viewpoint. One is in terms of how do we take the advantage of the statement of cooperative identity in attracting young people into cooperatives and also be able to explore new opportunities. I know the Philippines, you all have done a lot of work in terms of the laboratory cooperatives, trying to link the young with the mother and with the mother cooperative. But it'll be good to see, and especially now that we've talked about the importance of digitization and the opportunity to develop, get cooperatives more in the digital space. And these are areas which young people are interested in. So how do you all see being able to leverage the cooperative statement of identity and be able to put it across to youth and get them to join the cooperative across the country?
Balu.
Yes, please.
But yeah, Father Anton. Well, as you know, the youth, no, they are idealistic. Let us try to challenge the idealism of the youth, no, and appreciate cooperative as a 21st century kind of doing business. They said that in the 21st century, no, there are 3 requirements in every business undertaking. Triple bottom line. You must be profitable in order to sustain your business and to respond to the needs of our stakeholders. Profitability is the key in 21st century businesses. Second, you have to be environmentally friendly. You will not destroy the environment, rather develop and nurture the environment so that more people, it can be sustainable, not only for our generation but the next generation to come. And the third requirement for 21st century business is not only to be profitable and environmentally friendly, but the third is you must have a social impact, especially to those who are in the bottom of the pyramid, especially the poor, the marginalized, and the neglected. I think these are the 3 requirements in order to do business with respect in the 21st century. You have to be profitable, environment friendly, and social impact with the poor. And I think we can, this idealism can be challenged to the youth, because the youth are very idealistic. I would like to focus on that, to challenge the youth to be involved with the cooperative, because the cooperative has this ideology. We define cooperative as a ideology-based social enterprise. And we would like to challenge the idealism of the youth to follow the cooperative way of doing business. We would like to call it the cooperative way of doing business in the 21st century. Thank you.
But the question is, in terms of how do we encounter challenges in being able to get this message across to youth in terms of how cooperatives fit with this idealism? That's one. And two, is there in the way cooperatives are structured, or in terms of the environment, the enabling environment, that how cooperatives are perceived? Are there challenges to, what are the challenges to getting across to youth at this point in time? Yes, please, Mr. Noel.
Noel.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Sir Balo, for this talk. Seeing you again. By the way, when you talk about the youth, I think this is now the time that how we can attract the youth, no, those millennials to join the cooperative. For the past years in the database that we have in Climbs, the average member age now is around 48 years old, and the older there's a big the trend is getting older, because 5 years ago that was 45. Now we at Climbs, I think we believe that we have to go back again to the principles of voluntarism, the voluntary, which we will not attach financial yet. We will not attach the savings, the programs, but we will link the involvement of the youth to the community development, to our community development. Because the good thing for the cooperative in the Philippines, we have this fund, a 3% fund, even though there are some modification on how we spend on it, to involve our members and the youth to be more engageable, to engage more on the community development. An example for that is like the we are 14,000 cooperatives in the Philippines, then why come up with one-time cleanup drive whole Philippines, and let's involve those people, the youth, to part on it as part of their action program, youth action program. Another thing also is on education program, education. This is a little bit, I think it's not late, but the cooperative training, or most of our we have a Climbs Institute of Financial Literacy, or the Cooperative Institute of Management. However, the number of attendees who joined for that training, they are the same leaders who joined the training, and I think we have other institutions, also federations. We have the same people. Very few who are youth, very few who are young people, the managers, or maybe down to those who are new member or not member to the co-ops to join this training. So I think we have to go back again to this values based, no, on how we attract young people. But attracting young people is not about monetary, because generations differs to the oldest generations, no. And I think these new generations, they want, as Father Anton said, they want to create impact to the community. Then maybe this is the time that all our cooperative laborers, together with all federations, come up with specific projects. The value of volunteerism. Let's go back again to the value of volunteerism, and have our youth to engage in the world of cooperativism. Thank you, Balo.
Thank you. Anyone else in terms of how we address challenge to attract youth?
Balo, Dennis.
Yes, Dennis.
How to attract the youth. That reminded me of a story that to entice, to join the youth, to join the cooperative should start with the co-op leaders themselves. That reminded me of a true incident wherein a member of the board representing the youth shared in a board meeting among the oldies. And he said, how can the board of directors of my cooperative be models when in the middle of meeting they're quarreling, their attitudes do not represent what a true cooperator is? And do you want us to be influenced when you're showing negative aspects of humanity or being a cooperator? So from within, the youth can already see what the co-op leaders are doing. Another example, again, based on true story. A board of director went to a shopping center or mall, and he was wearing a shirt like this with a cooperative. And so a young sales lady approached her, sir, are you a member of a co-op? And that the person said, yes, I'm a member of a cooperative, see? And I'm even a board of director. And so the sales lady said, oh, no, sorry, the